I think one of the most successful tricks modern culture has ever pulled is making normal people feel like being single is not a situation but evidence. Like evidence that something is missing, evidence that something is wrong, evidence that maybe you were not attracted enough or interested enough or cute enough or feminine enough or masculine enough or whatever version of enough people are using this year. And the strange part is that we don't even notice how brutal the idea is because it sounds so normal now. It sounds almost sweet. Like, of course, love is the most important thing. Of course, finding your person is the point. Of course, the story is supposed to end with someone choosing you, because if no one chooses you, then what does that say about you? And honestly, I don't know, maybe this is the thought you're not really supposed to say out loud because it immediately makes you sound cold or bitter or emotionally damaged or like you're trying to cope with something. But I don't think love was meant to be this important. And I need to be very clear here because I can already hear how people might misunderstand this, but I'm not saying love is fake. I'm not saying love is weak. I'm not even saying love is overrated. Actually, I think love is one of the most powerful forces human beings have ever experienced, which is exactly why people lose their minds over it. People betray families because of it, leave countries, write poetry, ruin marriages, start wars and stories, wait for years, humiliate themselves because of it, and sometimes build their whole personality around the fact that someone did or did not love them back. So no, I don't think love is small. I think the opposite. I think love is so big that maybe we should have been more careful before making it the center of a person's entire identity. Because somewhere along the way, love stopped being just one part of life. It became the part that supposedly explains the whole life. It became the thing that is supposed to prove that you're desirable, that you're normal, that your life has a plot, that you're not just moving through the world unnoticed. And I think this is why modern love feels so heavy. Not because people are more romantic now or deeper or emotional than people before us. I mean, people have always been dramatic, let's be honest. But now love has to do too much. It has to make us feel chosen and safe and seen and meaningful and real. And now that I think about it, that is such a strange expectation to put on one person. Like, one person is supposed to arrive into your life and suddenly prove that your existence makes sense, and if they don't arrive or if they leave or if they choose someone else, then it starts to feel like the entire case of your own worth just collapsed, which is insane actually, but it only feels insane when you step outside of it from 1 second. Because for most of history, love existed. Of course it existed. People were not robots, but marriage, relationships, family, all of that was not built around this modern idea that one person should complete you, save you, validate you, understand you perfectly, and become the emotional center of your entire life. Welcome. I'm Angelina. Maybe this is where we have to start, not with dating apps, not with TikTok couples, not with people being obsessed with relationships, but much earlier with the comfortable fact that what we now call normal love is not as timeless as we think. The weird thing about modern love, at least to me, is that we talk about it as if this version of love has always been the default setting of human life, like humans just naturally walked around for thousands of years thinking, I need to find the wrong person who understands my soul, validates my existence, heals my childhood wants, and also makes a cute little story for other people to look at. And I mean, obviously people loved each other. I don't want to make the opposite mistake and act like everyone before the 20th century was just emotionally dead, because that would be ridiculous. People were writing poems, having affairs, crying over people, waiting for people, betraying people, probably making terrible decisions at night because of one look from someone across the room. So yes, love existed. Of course it existed. But marriage for most of history was not really built around what we now imagine when we say love story. And this is where I think Stephanie Coontz is really useful. She's a historian, and in 2005 she published a book called Marriage, A History How Love Conquered Marriage, which is such a good title, honestly, because it already suggests that love did not always belong to marriage in the way we think it does now. And the basic idea she explores is that through most of history, marriage was not primarily about two individuals choosing each other because they felt emotionally completed by each other. Marriage was a social institution. It was about families, property, labor, children, in-laws, religion, status, sometimes survival, sometimes alliances, sometimes just keeping the whole household system functioning. And I know this can sound unromantic or even depressing, but I don't think we should rush too quickly into judging it from our modern emotional expectations, because the point is not that the past was better. I really don't think it was. A lot of these systems were deeply unfair, especially to women, and I'm not sitting here saying, oh, we should go back to arranged marriages and property negotiations. Like, please no. But the fact that it sounds so alien to us is exactly what makes it interesting. Because we live in a world where love is supposed to justify the whole thing. If you marry someone, people expect the answer to be love. If you stay with someone, people expect the answer to be love. If you build a life with someone, we assume it must be because this person is your emotional home, your chosen person, your soulmate, or whatever language we're using now. But for many societies in history, that would have sounded like a very unstable foundation for something as serious as marriage. Like, you're going to organize family inheritance, children, labor, social status, religious duty, maybe even political alliances around a feeling, around desire, around attraction, around the thing that can disappear in 3 months because someone looked at someone else. And now that I think about it, this is where the modern myth becomes visible. We're so used to love being the reason for marriage that we forget how historically strange that is. We forget that for a very long time, love was not expected to carry the whole weight of adult life. It could exist inside marriage, it could exist outside marriage, it could be beautiful, dangerous, secret, tragic, ridiculous, whatever. But it was not always asked to prove that her life was meaningful. And maybe this is the first crack in the story we inherited, because if marriage was not always a love story, then maybe the way we treat romantic love now is not just natural human emotion. Maybe it is also a historical construction. Maybe we were taught to need love in a very specific way. The sentence marry for love sounds so obvious now that it almost feels embarrassing to explain it, because like, what else would you marry for, right? And I think this is exactly where we get trapped, because when something becomes morally obvious to us, we start imagining that it must have been always obvious to everyone. But it really wasn't. And again, I want to be careful here, because there's this very lazy version of the argument where people say, oh, nobody married for love until 50 years ago. And that is not true. That is just too simple. People did not suddenly discover love in the 1970s, like someone opened a drawer and found romantic feelings inside. People have always loved. People have always desired each other, suffered because of each other, written letters, had secret relationships, made stupid choices, ruined perfectly stable arrangements because of attraction, and honestly probably embarrassed themselves in a very familiar ways. So the point is not that love is new. The point is that love slowly became the main justification for marriage, and that is a very different statement. There's a historian, Lawrence Stone, who wrote this huge book in 1977 called The Family, Sex and Marriage in England, 1500 to 1800, and one of the ideas connected with his work is effective individualism, which sounds, I know, like the kind of phrase you read in a university article and immediately want to take a nap, but the idea is actually very interesting. He was describing a shift, especially in early modern England, from a world where family was more tied to hierarchy, property, kinship, obedience, and economic survival, toward a world where personal affection, individual choice, and emotional attachment start to matter more inside family life. And historians can debate the details, of course, they do debate the details. It's not like one historian writes a book and suddenly the whole path becomes simple. But even the fact that people argue about when this shift happened already tells us something. The love-based marriage that feels so natural to us is not just human nature, it has a history. And I find that almost funny, because we treat romantic love as this pure private feeling, like it is the one thing society cannot touch, the one thing that comes directly from the soul or the heart or whatever. But actually, even the way we understand our most private emotions is shaped by the world around us, by law, by religion, by literature, by money, by family expectations, by the stories people tell about what a good life is supposed to look like. So yes, love conquered marriage. But not in one clean dramatic moment. It happened slowly, unevenly, differently for different classes, different countries, different genders, and probably with a lot more contradiction that we usually want to admit. Because if love slowly conquered marriage, then maybe our current obsession with romantic love is not some eternal truth about the human heart. Maybe it is the result of a long historical process where one feeling was gradually asked to do more and more social work. First, love became a good reason to marry. Then it became the best reason to marry. Then it became almost the only respectable reason to marry. And now, somehow, it's became the thing that is supposed to prove whether your life is emotionally successful, which is a very strange jump when you actually say it out loud. Because falling in love with someone and using romantic love as a measurement of your entire worth are not the same thing at all, but somehow we moved from one to the other. I think the most exhausting thing about modern relationships is that they are not just relationships anymore. They are like, I don't know, emotional mirrors. You don't just ask, do I love this person? Or can we build something together? You start asking usually without even noticing it. What does this relationship say about me? What does this person choosing me prove about me? What does their desire mean about my value? And this is where love becomes very strange because it starts as a feeling toward another person, but then it slowly turns back toward yourself. Like someone loves you and suddenly feels like evidence that you're lovable. Someone desires you and suddenly feels like evidence that you're desirable. Someone commits to you and suddenly it feels like evidence that your life is moving in the correct direction. And I'm not even saying this is a criticism because I think most of us understand this feeling. It is very human. It feels good to be chosen. It feels stabilizing. It feels like the world is saying, okay, you're not invisible. But this is also where the pressure begins. Anthony Giddens, the sociologist, wrote about this in 1992 in The Transformation of Intimacy. He used the term pure relationship, and by that he did not mean pure in some moral or innocent sense. He meant a relationship that exists for the sake of the relationship itself, because the people inside it feel emotionally and sexually fulfilled by it, not because the village needs it or the family arranged it or property has to be protected or religion demands it. And honestly, when you first hear that, it sounds beautiful because yes, of course, why would you want a relationship held together only by duty or pressure or social punishment? But the strange thing is that when a relationship exists mainly because it fulfills the people inside it, then it has to keep proving that it fulfills them constantly. It has to feel meaningful. It has to feel authentic. It has to feel honest. It has to feel like growth. It has to feel like this person sees the real you and not just the version of you that is convenient. And now that I think about it, this is such a modern problem because the relationship is no longer just a structure around your life. It becomes part of your identity. It becomes part of you, how you explain yourself to yourself. This is why people can be completely destroyed by a breakup in a way that is not only about missing the person. Of course you miss the person. Of course there is a grief. But sometimes what collapses is not just a relationship. It's the version of yourself that existed inside that relationship. You were the person someone chose. You were the person someone wanted. You were the person who had a future with someone. And then suddenly you're not. And it feels like you have to rebuild not only your life, but your own explanation of who you are. And I think this is why modern love feels so emotionally dangerous. Because we don't just lose people. We lose the identity they gave us, or maybe not gave us, but reflected back to us. And once love becomes a mirror of the self, the absence of love starts feeling like a statement about the self too, which is probably why being single is rarely treated as a neutral fact. It becomes a clue, a suspicion, a question mark. And from there, culture has a very easy job. It just has to keep showing us what love is supposed to look like until we start measuring our own lives against images that were never neutral in the first place. The dangerous thing about romantic culture is that it does not just tell you that love is beautiful. That would be fine, honestly. Love is beautiful, or at least it can be. The more dangerous thing is that it quietly teaches you what love is supposed to look like before you even have a chance to understand what you actually feel. And I think about this a lot because sometimes people talk about romance as if this the most natural, private, untouched part of human life. Like everything else can be influenced by society, money, status, religion, family. But love is just pure feeling. And I don't know, maybe that is comforting, but I don't think it's true. Because even when we feel something very real, we still need images for it. We need language for it. We need scenes. We need examples. We need to know what counts as romantic, what counts as serious, what counts as proof, what counts as not enough. And most of us did not invent those images ourselves. We absorbed them from novels, movies, songs, advertisements, from weddings, from Valentine's Day, from celebrity couples, from TikTok, from people posting flowers in hotel room, in anniversary captions and engagement photos where everyone suddenly looks like the final episode of a life they successfully completed. And this is where Illouz becomes really useful. She is a sociologist, and in 1997 she published Consuming the Romantic Utopia, where she writes about how modern romance became deeply connected to consumer capitalism and mass media. Basically, she studies how our idea of true love is shaped by images, cliches, rituals, and things we buy or consume: dates, restaurants, movies, trips, gifts, photographs, all of that. And when I first came across this idea, I had this uncomfortable feeling because it does not mean our emotions are fake. That would be too simple. It means that even real emotions learn how to present themselves through culture. Like, you can genuinely love someone and still imagine that love through scenes you have seen before: a walk at night, message at the right time, someone choosing you in public, someone posting you, someone making you feel like the main character in a story that other people can recognize. Which is funny because we often say, I just want something real, but then our image of real is already full of borrowed symbols. We want authenticity, but we also want it to look like authenticity. We want intimacy, but we also want it to have a shape. We want to love, but we also want the story of love. And I think social media made this even more intense because now romance is not only something you experience privately, it becomes something you display. Not always, of course, but often enough, it becomes visual proof that life is happening to you in the right way. You're loved, therefore your life has movement. You're chosen, therefore you're not invisible. You have someone, therefore the plot is working. And maybe this is why people can feel lonely even when they do not actually want a relationship with a specific person. They want the image, the confirmation, the feeling that their life also belongs to this universal story everyone keeps performing. So at this point, love is no longer just a feeling between two people. It becomes a cultural language. If you do not speak the language, or if no one speaks it with you, it starts to feel like you're standing outside the main human experience, which is a lot of pressure for something that was supposed to be intimate. I think one of the most unfair things we do to love now is that we treat one person like they are supposed to become an entire world. And the funny thing is, we don't even say it directly, because if you say it directly, it would sound insane. Like, imagine telling someone, hi, I would like you to be my best friend, my therapist, my emotional home, my witness, my future, my proof that I'm desirable, my source of stability, my source of excitement, my personal growth coach, and also the person who somehow makes my life feel meaningful without making me feel trapped. No one would say yes to that contract, or maybe some people would, which is even more worrying. But this is kind of what we expect, isn't it? Not always consciously, but emotionally. We don't just want a partner, we want someone who will make us feel like life has finally started properly. Someone who will look at us and somehow explain us to ourselves. Someone who will see the version of us we want to believe exists. And this is where Eli Finkel's idea becomes really interesting. He's a psychologist, and in 2017, he published The All or Nothing Marriage, where he argues that expectations in American marriage have moved upward, almost like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Earlier, marriages were often expected to provide things like survival, security, household labor, children, stability, and social order. But modern marriage is increasingly expected to provide higher psychological needs like love, self-expression, authenticity, and self-actualization. And I mean, when you hear that, it sounds beautiful at first, because yes, of course we want relationships where people help each other grow. Of course we want intimacy, emotional honesty, mutual support, all of that. I don't think anyone is sitting here dreaming about a code arrangement where two people just share bills and silently resent each other until death. But the problem is that these higher expectations require more emotional oxygen. Finkel and his colleagues have this related idea called the suffocation model of marriage, which basically said that when we expect marriage to meet these higher emotional needs, but we do not invest enough time, energy, attention, and support into it, the relationship starts to suffocate. And honestly, that makes so much sense to me, because modern people often have smaller communities, weaker family networks, less stable social life, less religion, less neighborhood, less shared ritual, less everything, and then we turn to one person and say, can you please compensate for all of that? Which is not love anymore. Or not only love, it is a demand for rescue. And maybe this is why so many people are disappointed even when they technically get that relationship they wanted, because the relationship was never just supposed to be a relationship. It was supposed to fix loneliness, give identity, create meaning, prove desirability, heal insecurity, and make ordinary life feel cinematic. And no person can do that consistently, even a good person, even a loving person. Because a partner can love you, but they cannot become your entire source of selfhood. They can support your life, but they cannot be the only reason your life feels real. And I think this is where modern romance becomes almost cruel, because it promises us that one person can finally make us whole, and then when the person fails, because they are human, we don't question the promise, we question ourselves. We think maybe we chose wrong, maybe we're too needy, maybe they did not love us enough, maybe love itself was not real enough, but maybe the expectation was already impossible. And if one person is not supposed to replace an entire world, then it becomes easier to understand why the absence of that person, or the absence of romantic love in general, feels so terrifying now. It is not just loneliness, it is the fear that without love, there is nothing left to prove that we are okay. I think the cruelest part is that being in love now does not just feel like being alone. It feels like being disproven. Like there was some invisible argument you were making about yourself, that you're desirable, that you're worth choosing, that your life is moving somewhere, that you are not just watching other people have the main human experience. And then the absence of romantic love feels like someone quietly rejected the whole argument. And honestly, that is such a strange way to live when you actually pause and think about it, because being single should be a description, not a verdict. It should mean I'm not in a romantic relationship right now. That's all. But culture, it often means much more. It becomes a clue. People start interpreting it. You start interpreting it. Like, why am I alone? What does it say about me? Am I too difficult, too boring, too independent, too damaged, too unattractive, too much, not enough at all? And this is where Andrew Cherlin's work is really interesting. In 2004, he published this article called The Institutionalization of American Marriage, and he talks about how marriage, especially in the United States, became less strictly governed by old social rules and obligations. So in practical terms, marriage became less necessary than before. People can work, live alone, divorce, cohabit, have children outside marriage, build lives in different ways, but at the same time, Cherlin argues that marriage kept this enormous symbolic power. It became, in a way, a marker of achievement. And I think romantic love works like that too. Maybe we need it less for survival than people in the past needed marriage structures, but symbolically we need it more than ever. Because now being chosen by someone feels like public and private proof that you have succeeded emotionally, which is why singlehood becomes so loaded. DePaulo and Wendy wrote about this in 2006 about something they call singlism, meaning the stereotypes and quiet prejudice against single people. And once you notice it, you see it everywhere. Single people are treated as incomplete, immature, suspiciously independent, secretly sad, or like they're just in a waiting room before real life begins. And I don't know, maybe this is why so many people are obsessed with love even when they don't seem to actually like relationships. They like the proof, they like the status of being chosen, they like the relief of not having to explain themselves anymore. Because if you're loved, people understand your life more easily. There is a plot, there is someone next to you, there is evidence. But if you're alone, suddenly your life has to justify itself without the most culturally accepted proof of meaning. And this is where I come back to the first thought. I don't think love was meant to be this important. Not because love is not real, not because love is not beautiful. I think it is important, deeply important, maybe one of the most important things people can experience. But maybe it was never supposed to be the only thing standing between us and the fear that we are not enough. Maybe love becomes healthier when it stops being a test, when it stops being the place where we try to prove that we're worth waiting, when it stops being that thing that has to rescue an entire life that we never built us out of it. And I guess that is the uncomfortable part, because it means that answer is not to become cold or cynical or above love, because that is also just another performance. It means we have to build a life that does not collapse in the absence of romance. A life with work, friendship, curiosity, beauty, discipline, faith if you have it, community if you can find it, solitude if you can survive it. And then maybe love can become love again. Not a card term, not a religion, not a final proof that you matter. Just love, which is already hard enough. Anyway, that's what I thought when I started asking why love became so important.